She found 10 men in black suits circling her father's tombstone. The mafia boss was paying a debt. The cold October wind was a familiar, unwelcome slap to the face as I pushed through the rusted iron gates of Oak Crest Cemetery. It was a ritual. This walk. 10 years. Today marked the 10th anniversary of Marco Moretti's death. My father. A man I knew only in fragments, like a photograph torn into pieces. I clutched the thin lapels of my coat. I never brought flowers. Not anymore. The first few years, I'd brought lilies, feeling the societal pressure to perform grief. But the grief never came. All I ever felt was a dull, hollow ache and the lingering chill of abandonment. He was gone. And I was still here. Stuck in a life that felt like a waiting room, pouring coffee for tips in a city that had swallowed me whole. I was 27. My life was a third-floor walk-up with faulty plumbing, student loans I'd never repay, and the fading, bitter memory of a man who chose his secrets over his daughter. I navigated the familiar path, my worn boots crunching on the gravel. I passed the angels weeping over forgotten tombs, the grand mausoleums of families who had owned this city, until I reached the simple, grassy slope where he lay. And I stopped. My breath caught, snagged in my throat. He wasn't alone. My father's grave was surrounded. 10 men. 10. Perfectly still men, all dressed in immaculate black suits. They stood in a silent, precise circle, facing the simple granite headstone. They were like statues, like shadows given form, their hands clasped respectfully in front of them. This wasn't grief. This was something else. This was an occupation. My first instinct was confusion, a sharp annoyance. This was my day, my ritual, my empty space to fill with my own numbness. Who were they? Business associates? His drinking buddies from whatever life he'd hidden from me? I was a barista, but I was also a Chicago girl. I had a temper I usually kept bottled up with the steam from the espresso machine. Today, it bubbled over. I marched forward, my boots sinking into the soft earth. "Excuse me," I called out. My voice sounded thin, whipped away by the wind. None of them moved, not a head turned. It was as if I hadn't spoken. I got closer, emboldened by their silence, irritated by their presence. "Hey," I said, louder. "What do you think you're doing? This is a private—" One of the men, the largest, standing nearest the path, turned his head slowly. His eyes were hidden behind dark sunglasses, but I felt the weight of his gaze. He simply turned, looked at me, and then looked away, dismissing me. Anger, hot and sudden, flushed my cheeks. "You can't just stand here. This is my father's grave. Show some respect. Leave." The circle broke. It parted like a curtain, and a man stepped out from the center, from the space closest to the headstone. The other 9 men were shadows. He was the substance. He was tall, with a lean, wolfish build that his suit couldn't hide. It was tailored so perfectly it looked molded to him, a dark gray wool that was probably worth more than my apartment. His hair was black, thick, and brushed back from a strong brow. He wasn't classically handsome. His face was too harsh for that. All sharp angles and unforgiving lines. A faint, silver scar cut through his left eyebrow. But it was his eyes that stopped me. They were the color of cold steel, clear and analytical, and they held no warmth at all. He watched me with an unnerving stillness, an absolute predatory patience. He walked toward me, his expensive shoes making no sound on the grass. He stopped about 5 feet away, a respectful distance, and tilted his head. "You are Ava Moretti," he said. It wasn't a question. His voice was deep, smooth, with a gravelly edge, like whiskey poured over rocks. I crossed my arms. It was a pathetic defense. "Who are you? And what are you doing here?" He didn't smile. His expression remained utterly neutral, which was somehow more intimidating than a scowl. "My name is Luca Romano." The name meant nothing to me. It was just a name. "Okay, Luca Romano. That doesn't answer my question. "We are paying our respects," he said, his gaze flickering to the headstone and then back to me. "He doesn't have any friends," I said, the words sharp. "He didn't leave any. Whatever this is, it's 10 years too late, so you can leave." One corner of his mouth twitched, the barest hint of movement. "Your father and I were not friends." "Then what were you?" He took another step closer. I felt a sudden primal urge to step back, to run, but I held my ground. My heart was a hammer against my ribs. He wasn't just intimidating, he was dangerous. It radiated from him like a cold front. "Your father saved my life, Luca Romano said, his voice dropping, forcing me to lean in. "I came to repay a debt." The words hung in the air, thick and heavy. Saved his life? My father, the man who sold insurance, or fixed electronics, or whatever lie he'd been spinning that year. It made no sense. "A debt," I repeated, tasting the word. It was metallic, like old blood. "I don't know what you're talking about. My father's dead. Whatever debt you think you owe, it's buried with him." His steel gray eyes seemed to look right through me, peeling back the layers of my cheap coat and my practiced indifference. "Debts like these are never buried, Ava," he said softly. He held my gaze for another second, a long, searching look that made me feel exposed. Then he nodded once, a crisp, final gesture. He turned and walked back toward the grave. The men fell into formation around him. A silent, disciplined cohort. They didn't speak, they just moved. A few seconds later, the entire group was walking away, disappearing down the path, leaving me alone with the wind and a granite stone. I stood there for a long time, my legs shaking. My father saved his life. I came to repay a debt. I didn't go home right away. I drove my beat-up sedan through the city, the heater rattling, trying to push the cold from my bones and the man's voice from my head. Romano. What kind of man commands that sort of silent obedience? What kind of man comes to a cemetery with a small army in black suits? By the time I got back to my apartment building in Pilsen, dusk was settling, turning the sky a bruised purple. I was exhausted. My mind a tangle of questions. I just wanted to lock my door, make instant ramen, and forget the entire day. I parked, pulling my keys from the ignition, and I saw it. In my rearview mirror, a dark sedan, a generic model, parked half a block down. Its headlights were off, but I could see the silhouette of a man in the driver's seat. My skin prickled. It was nothing. This was Chicago. People parked on the street. But I'd been driving around for an hour. Had I seen that car before? I got out of my car, my keys clutched in my fist, the sharpest one poking out between my fingers. I started walking toward my building, my footsteps echoing in the quiet street. I heard a car door open. I didn't turn around. I walked faster. The sound of heavier footsteps followed, not running, just walking, confident, steady. I fumbled with the keys at the main entrance of my building. My hands were shaking so hard I couldn't get the key in the lock. Ava. The voice was not Luca Romano's. This was rougher, like gravel in a blender. I froze. I turned around. He was 20 feet away, a different man, shorter, stockier, wearing a stained hoodie and a beanie. He was just a guy, but his eyes were fixed on me. "What do you want?" I snapped, trying to sound brave. He stopped. He just looked at me. Then his eyes darted up the street, a flicker of panic? He held up his hands, almost in apology, and backed away. Just watch yourself," he mumbled. He turned and walked quickly back to the sedan, got in, and squealed away from the curb, running the stop sign at the end of the block. I finally got the door open and stumbled into the lobby, leaning back against the cold tile, my heart trying to escape my chest. What was happening? Upstairs, I double-bolted my door. I checked the flimsy lock on my window. I felt violated. The cemetery, my street, my building, nothing felt safe. My phone rang, buzzing violently on the kitchen counter. I looked at it. Block number. My hand hovered over the screen. This was how it started in movies. This was the moment the stupid girl does the stupid thing. I answered it. "Hello?" I whispered. Silence. Just the sound of breathing. Static on the line. "Hello?" I said again, louder. "Stay away from Romano," a voice rasped. It was distorted, electronic, or maybe just choked with malice. "He's poison. You keep near him, you'll end up in the ground, just like your father." The line clicked dead. I dropped the phone. It clattered to the linoleum. I didn't sleep. I sat on my couch, wrapped in a blanket, watching the sliver of light under my front door, jumping at every creak of the building, every distant siren. Romano. The name was a curse. My father saved his life. You'll end up in the ground. The next morning, I walked to work on pure, terrified adrenaline. The coffee shop, the daily grind, was my sanctuary. The smell of roasted beans, the hiss of the steamer, the familiar faces of the regulars. It was the only stability I had. I turned the corner, and my stomach dropped to the pavement. There was no glass left in the front window. It was a gaping black hole. The door was splintered, hanging off one hinge. And the paint, red paint, everywhere, sprayed across the brick, the sidewalk, the shattered glass. It wasn't a word. It was just paint. An explosion of rage. My boss, Mike, was standing on the curb talking to a police officer. Mike was a good man, with a wife and 2 kids and a mortgage he complained about. He looked gray. He saw me, and his expression was a miserable mix of pity and fear. "Ava," he said, his voice hoarse. He walked over to me, leaving the cop. "Mike, what happened? Who would do this?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. He was wringing his hands, pulling a cleaning rag between them. They didn't take anything. "Ava, just this. The register was full. They didn't touch it." "What?" "They just broke everything." He finally looked at me, and his eyes were terrified. "Someone threw a brick through the window last night. My neighbor heard it, and this morning, this..." The cop walked over. "Ma'am, does the name Romano mean anything to you?" I went cold, utterly, dreadfully cold. No, I lied. The lie was weak, thin. The cop sighed. He looked tired. "Someone left this." He held up an evidence bag. Inside was a small, white business card, blank, except for a single, embossed silver wolf's head. He didn't have to say anything else. Mike cleared his throat. "Ava, I'm so sorry." "Mike, what?" "You can't work here anymore." It came out in a rush. "I can't. I have a family. This is trouble. This is your trouble. I'll pay you for the month, but you can't come back. I'm sorry." He was already backing away, back toward the safety of the cop. I was fired. I stood there on the broken glass, smelling the metallic tang of the red paint. Yesterday I had a life, a crappy life, but it was mine. Today, I had nothing. I walked home. I had nowhere else to go. The city was gray. The people were gray. I was numb. I sat in my apartment until the sun went down. I didn't turn on the lights. I just sat in the dark, watching the shadows get longer. The phone call, the car, the vandalism, my father, Luca Romano. It was all his fault. A knock echoed at my door, a sharp, confident rat-tat-tat. It wasn't a neighbor. It wasn't a friend. I didn't have any... I held my breath. "Ava?" My blood turned to ice. It was his voice, Luca Romano, and he was outside my door. "Go away," I whispered, pressing my back against the wall. "I know you're in there. Ava, we need to talk." "We have nothing to talk about," I shouted, my voice cracking. "You did this. My job, the coffee shop. They fired me because of you." They were sending a message. His voice was calm, impossibly calm, penetrating the cheap wood of the door. "It wasn't for your boss. It was for me. Open the door." "No, go away. Leave me alone." "I am not the one you need to be afraid of. The men who did that to your shop are not polite. They will not knock." I was crying now, hot, angry tears of frustration and terror. "This is my life. You don't get to come here and destroy it." There was a heavy sigh on the other side of the door. "You are in danger. Your life, the one you knew, ended yesterday at the cemetery. You are coming with me." "I'm not going anywhere with you." The building's fire alarm suddenly shrieked, a deafening, piercing wail. I screamed, clutching my head. "What is that?" Luca's voice was no longer calm. It was sharp, urgent. "Ava, get away from the door." Then I heard another sound, the sound I'd heard last night, at the shop, the sound of shattering glass. It came from my living room. I spun around. The window over the fire escape was gone, and in its place, a bottle, stuffed with a burning rag, sailed through the air in a perfect, terrible arc. It landed on my couch. The world erupted in orange. The Molotov cocktail exploded. Flames shot to the ceiling, instantly consuming the cheap fabric, the curtains, the stack of unpaid bills on my coffee table. The heat was immediate, a physical blow. "Ava!" Luca roared. He wasn't at the door anymore. He was kicking it. The frame splintered. I was paralyzed. The smoke was acrid, filling my lungs. The fire was spreading, climbing the walls. The door burst open, ripped from its hinges. Luca Romano stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the dim hall light. The flames reflected in his eyes. He didn't hesitate. He crossed the room in 2 strides, grabbing my arm. "We're leaving. Now." His grip was like iron. It wasn't a request. I didn't fight. I just ran. He pulled me through the doorway, shielding my head with his other arm as debris rained down. He slammed the door shut, a futile gesture, and dragged me down the hallway, toward the stairs. People were screaming, doors opening. "Fire!" Luca yelled. "Get out!" He didn't let go of me. Not for a second, Flarzit. His hand was wrapped around my upper arm, a possessive, painful grip that was the only thing keeping me upright. We tumbled down the 3 flights of stairs, hitting the lobby just as the first sirens wailed in the distance. He shoved me out the front door, into the cold night air. I doubled over, coughing, my lungs burning, my eyes streaming. A long, black Mercedes was parked at the curb, engine running. One of the men from the cemetery was in the driver's seat. Luca pushed me toward the back door. "Get in." Where are we going?" I gasped, wiping soot from my face. "Somewhere safe." He was already scanning the street, his eyes moving, checking rooftops, alleys. He was a creature of this new, terrifying world. He practically threw me into the back seat, the leather impossibly soft, and slid in beside me. "Go," he commanded. The car peeled away from the curb just as the first fire truck screamed around the corner. I looked back, watching my apartment, my life, go up in flames. I turned to him, my entire body shaking. My stuff, everything. "They are just things," he said, his voice flat. He wasn't looking at me. He was watching the city pass by, his jaw tight. "They were my things," I shrieked, hitting the seat. "It was my life. You, who are you?" He finally turned. His steel-gray eyes met mine. In the flashing lights of the city, he looked less like a man and more like a judgment. "I am the man your father saved." We drove for a long time. The city lights of Chicago faded, replaced by the endless, dark sprawl of the suburbs. And then, nothing. Trees, long, winding roads. We drove through another set of massive iron gates, identical to the ones at the cemetery, but these were new, imposing and topped with wire. Guards, armed with weapons I didn't recognize, waved us through. The car crunched up a gravel driveway and stopped in front of a house. It wasn't a house, it was a fortress, a sprawling mansion of dark stone and cold glass, built to look imposing, built to withstand a siege. It was beautiful, in a terrifying, sterile way. The driver opened my door. I didn't move. Luca got out, walked around, and looked at me. "This is my estate. You will be safe here." "Safe?" I said, my voice dripping with bitter irony. "I wasn't in danger until I met you. This isn't safety. This is a cage." "It is what it is," he said, extending a hand. I ignored it, sliding out of the car myself. I stood on the driveway, feeling small, displaced. I was still wearing my coffee shop uniform, now stained with soot and water. He led me inside. The interior was vast, cold and silent, marble floors, a staircase that belonged in a movie. A woman, older, with her hair in a severe bun, met us at the door. "Maria, this is Ava. She'll be staying in the East Wing guest suite. Get her clothes, food, whatever she needs." "Yes, Mr. Romano," the woman, Maria, said, her face impassive. "I don't want anything," I said, my voice raw. Luca ignored me. He turned and started walking down a long hallway. "Wait," I called out. He stopped, but didn't turn. "You don't get to do this," I said, walking after him. "You don't get to burn my life down and then just walk away. You owe me answers." He turned slowly. We were in a study. Dark wood, leather-bound books, a massive desk. It smelled like old paper and something clean, like him. "You owe me," I repeated, jabbing a finger at his chest. I was close enough now to see the silver in his scar, the flecks of gray in his black hair. "I owe your father," he corrected, his voice dangerously soft. "My father is dead. I'm the one who's here. I'm the one whose apartment just burned down. I'm the one who lost her job. So you're going to tell me. What was the debt? Why did he save you? And who was trying to kill me?" He just watched me. His stillness was a wall. He didn't react, didn't flinch. He let my words, my anger, my terror wash over him. And they changed nothing. "You don't get to be silent," I whispered, my anger crumbling. "Please." He took a step. I held my breath. He took another step. He was in my space now. He was so tall. I had to crane my neck to look at him. He was all I could smell, all I could see. He raised a hand. I flinched, expecting a blow. His hand stopped, hovering near my face. His eyes scanned mine, searching for something. He was close. Close enough for me to feel the heat radiating from his body. Close enough for me to feel his breath on my forehead. It wasn't a romantic gesture. It was an assessment. It was power. He was showing me, without a single word, that he could end me or save me, and it was entirely his choice. My heart was rioting, a frantic bird in a cage, but I refused to look away. His gaze dropped to my mouth. The moment stretched, thick with unspoken tension, with the smell of smoke and danger. He leaned in, his lips brushing the air by my ear. I shivered, my skin alive with a feeling I couldn't name. And he said nothing. He just breathed, once, a slow, controlled inhale. Then he pulled back. The connection snapped. The room was cold again. "Maria will show you to your room," he said, his voice flat, dismissing me as if I were a servant, as if that moment hadn't happened. He turned his back to me, walking to the massive window, looking out over his dark, protected kingdom. I stood there, shaking. Maria gently touched my elbow. "Miss, this way." I let her lead me. I was hollowed out. The guest bedroom was bigger than my entire apartment. The sheets were silk. The bathroom was marble. A prison of luxury. I sat on the edge of the bed for hours, listening to the silence of the house. The city was a distant, faint glow on the horizon, a life that was no longer mine. I lay down, my mind replaying the day, the suits, the fire, the coffee shop. I replayed the study, the feeling of his breath, the moment I thought he might... What? Kiss me. Kill me. I touched my arm, the spot where he had grabbed me, where his hand had held me as we ran from the fire. His touch hadn't been gentle. It had been certain, possessive, absolute. My heart was racing, pounding in the quiet room. But it wasn't just from fear. I was terrified. Yes, I was terrified of him, of what he represented. But as I lay there, in a stranger's bed, in a fortress miles from home, I had to admit the truth. My heart was racing because for the first time in my entire life, tucked away in the dragon's lair, I felt something other than numb. And as I ran through that burning building, with his hand clamped on my arm. It was the only moment in the last 10 years that I had felt completely, undeniably safe. And that, more than anything, was what unsettled me. I woke to a silence so complete it was suffocating. For a moment, I was adrift, disoriented. The smell of smoke was gone, replaced by the faint, sterile scent of lemon oil and old money. Then I opened my eyes, and the oppressive luxury of the guest suite slammed back into me. Sunlight, weak and gray, streamed through windows that were at least 10 feet tall, illuminating a room that was shades of cream and beige, a room with no soul. My clothes from last night were gone. In their place, laid out on a velvet chaise, was a set of simple, expensive-looking clothes, a gray cashmere sweater, black leggings, and soft wool socks. Someone had come in while I slept. The thought sent a chill through me, a violation that felt almost as bad as the fire. I dressed, the soft fibers feeling alien against my skin. I was a prisoner in a cashmere cage. When I finally found the courage to open the door, the hallway was as silent as the room. Marble floors stretched out in either direction, cold and gleaming. I had no idea where I was going, but I couldn't stay in that room. I had to move. I wandered. The house was a museum of a life I couldn't comprehend. Soaring ceilings, heavy, dark furniture, and art that looked like it belonged behind velvet ropes. But there were no photographs, no clutter, no life. Just the heavy, oppressive tension, the same feeling I got from Luca Romano. I found the kitchen, a massive stainless steel cathedral, where Maria, the housekeeper, was polishing an already gleaming copper pot. She looked up when I entered, her face as impassive as it had been last night. "You are awake," she said. "Mr. Romano is not here. I can make you breakfast." "I'm not hungry." My voice was a croak. "Where is he?" "He had business." She turned back to her pot, a clear dismissal. "And the other one?" I pressed, remembering the man who had driven the car. Maria's hands paused. "Enzo is in the garden. He's Mr. Romano's second." I didn't know what a second was, but it sounded ominous. I left her in the gleaming kitchen and went in search of the garden, driven by a desperate need for fresh air. I found a set of French doors and stepped out onto a wide stone terrace. The grounds were immaculate, a rolling expanse of perfect green lawns and skeletal trees, all surrounded by a high, imposing stone wall. It was beautiful, and it was a prison. A man was standing at the far end of the terrace, looking out over the wall. He was younger than Luca, maybe in his early 30s, with a wiry, energetic build and curly brown hair. He wore a suit but had shed the jacket, and a holster was clearly visible on his hip. He turned as I approached, and his face broke into a surprisingly warm, disarming smile. "You must be Ava," he said, his voice friendly, casual, as if we were meeting at a backyard barbecue. "I'm Enzo. Don't mind Maria. Her heart is in the right place. It's just locked in a safe." I couldn't help the small, surprised laugh that escaped me. "She's efficient. She's terrified of dust. Me, I'm just here for the view." He gestured to the wall. "It's something, isn't it? Luca likes his privacy." "It's a fortress," I said, crossing my arms. Enzo's smile faded, his eyes becoming more serious. He looked at me, really looked at me, with a flicker of something like pity. "It's necessary. You'll be safe here, Ava. I promise you that." "That's what he said." I turned from him, the cold wind whipping my hair. Safe from what? Safe from who? No one will tell me anything. The silence that followed was heavy. When I turned back, Luca was standing in the doorway, watching us. He had entered as silently as a ghost. He wore a black suit, a white shirt, no tie, and he looked exhausted. Dark circles bruised the skin under his eyes, and the scar on his eyebrow seemed more prominent. "Enzo," he said, his voice low. "Boss," Enzo replied, the warmth gone, replaced by crisp respect. He nodded to me, a quick, polite gesture, and walked past Luca into the house. Now it was just the two of us on the terrace. The air crackled. "You have questions," he said, walking toward me. I have a life that is a pile of ash, I snapped. I lost my job. I lost my home. And you're telling me I'll be safe? I wasn't in danger until I saw you at that cemetery. You have been in danger for 10 years, he said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. You just didn't know it. Come inside. He didn't wait for me. He just turned and walked, expecting me to follow. My blood boiled, but I followed him. Where else could I go? He led me back to the dark, imposing study from last night. He didn't sit behind the desk, this time. He stood by the cold fireplace, turning to face me. He looked like a man preparing to pronounce a sentence. Sit down, Ava. I'll stand. He nodded, accepting it. Last night, you asked me what the debt was. You asked why your father saved me. And you breathed on me and walked away? His eyes flashed, a brief spark of anger, but he controlled it. 10 years ago, I was young, I was ambitious, but I was not careful. I trusted the wrong people. There was a move against me, an internal disagreement. A hit was ordered. The man sent to carry it out was your father. The air left my lungs. I gripped the back of a leather chair, my knuckles white. My father, a hitman? He was many things, Lucas said, his voice softening just a fraction. He was deep inside the organization, deeper than I knew. He was supposed to drive me to a location on the west side. The plan was to put 2 bullets in my head and leave me in the car, but he didn't. I stared at him, my mind unable to form the picture. My father, Marco Moretti, the man who couldn't even remember my birthday. We drove, Luca continued, his voice distant, lost in the memory. And he just talked about the Cubs, about the weather, about a daughter he had, a little girl. He said he hadn't seen you in a while. He said he was trying to get out, to build a life so he could be a real father. Tears pricked my eyes, hot and angry. He was lying. No, Lucas said, his voice sharp. He was not. When we got to the location, he stopped the car. He turned to me, and he said, "They want me to kill you, kid, but you've got a look in your eye. You're going to change things. I'm not going to be the man who stops that, and I'm not going to die with a daughter who hates me." I was shaking my head, a silent, violent no. He gave me his gun, Lucas said. He told me who had ordered the hit. He told me to run, and I did. I ran, and I used the information he gave me to survive. I tore the organization apart and rebuilt it. I became who I am because of him. I finally found my voice, a ragged whisper. So what? He just retired. Luca's face darkened. The brief light of the memory was extinguished. They don't let you retire, Ava. Not when you know what he knew. Not when you betray an order. What happened to him? I demanded, though I already knew. The cold, hollow feeling in my chest was the answer. He disappeared, and I looked for him to protect him, but he was too good at hiding. A few weeks later, he was found, an accident at his apartment, a gas leak, an explosion. Just like my apartment, just like the fire. It all clicked into place, a horrifying, sickening mosaic. "The men who I ran from the car with last night," I whispered. "The men who vandalized the coffee shop. Who are they?" "The Venetti Syndicate," Luca said, the name sounding like a curse. "The survivors, the ones who my father, and your father, failed to root out. The man who ordered the hit on me all those years ago had a son, Dominic Venetti. He runs things now, and he holds a grudge." The silence in the room was a living thing, a heavy, suffocating weight. "So you're telling me," I said, my voice dangerously calm, the words precise and cold, "that my father chose you. He chose to save your life, and he died for it." Luca met my gaze. His gray eyes were unblinking, filled with a guilt so old it was part of him. Yes. The rage was a physical thing. It rose up from my stomach, scorching my throat. I uncurled my fingers from the chair and launched myself at him. I didn't have a plan. I just needed to hit something. I slammed my open palms against his chest. It was like hitting a wall of stone. "So my dad died for you," I screamed, hitting him again. He died for you, and where were you? He gave you his gun. He gave you a life, and you let him die. Ava! He grabbed my wrists, his grip like steel, easily stopping my pathetic attack. You owe me, I cried, struggling against him, the tears finally breaking free. You don't owe him. He's dead. You owe me. You owe me a father. Stop. He didn't raise his voice, but the command cut through my hysteria. He held me fast, my face just inches from his. I could see the lines around his eyes, the muscle working in his jaw. I cannot bring him back, he said, his voice a low, rough rasp. I cannot change what happened, but I can honor the debt, and that debt is you. He saved my life, so I will protect his. He let go of my wrists. I stumbled back, rubbing the red marks. I'm not your responsibility, I spat. Yes, you are, he said, with a finality that broke me. Dominic Vanetti has been watching me for years, waiting for a weakness. He saw me at the cemetery. He saw me with you. He knows your father was the one who betrayed them. He knows I am protecting you. You are not just a person to him anymore. Ava, you are leverage. I collapsed into the chair, the fight draining out of me, leaving me as hollow as I'd felt at the grave. What do you want from me? I want you to stay here. I want you to stay alive. That night, the nightmares came. It wasn't just the fire. It was all of it. The 10 men in black suits, their faces blank, the cold headstone, my father's face, a face I barely remembered, turning into Luca's. The sound of shattering glass, the rasp of the voice on the phone. You'll end up in the ground, just like your father. I woke up with a gasp, sitting bolt upright in the silk sheets. My heart was pounding, my skin clammy with sweat. The room was dark, the silence was back, but I could still hear the voice. It was just a dream, I screamed. Luca was standing in the doorway of my bedroom, a dark silhouette against the hall light. How did you get in? I stammered, pulling the comforter up to my chin. The door was unlocked, he said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. He stepped into the room. He was barefoot, wearing a black t-shirt and gray sweatpants. The casual clothes were more disarming than the suit. I could see the muscles in his arms, the hard lines of his chest. You can't just come in here, I said, my voice shaking. You were screaming. He didn't come closer. He stayed near the door, giving me space. A nightmare. I nodded, clutching the blanket. The cemetery, the fire. He was quiet for a long moment. He just watched me, his gray eyes seeming to absorb the darkness in the room. They are just shadows. Ava, they can't hurt you here. He took a step, and I flinched. He stopped. I am not him, he said softly. I'm not your father. I will not abandon you. He walked to the bed. I shrank back, but I had nowhere to go. He didn't touch me. He just stood over me. A mountain of quiet, contained power. You are under my protection, he said, his voice a low vibration that I felt in my chest. That is not just a promise. It is a fact. As long as you are in this house, as long as I am alive, you are safe. He raised his hand, the same hand he had held up in the study. I watched it, mesmerized, terrified. He gently, almost hesitantly, brushed a strand of damp hair from my cheek. His fingers were rough, calloused, but his touch was impossibly light. It was a spark on my skin, a sudden, shocking warmth that traveled straight to my core. I stopped breathing. His thumb grazed my cheekbone. His eyes were locked on mine, and for the first time, I saw something in them other than guilt or anger. I saw a loneliness that mirrored my own. No one touches what I protect, he whispered. And then he was gone. He turned and walked out of the room, leaving me with the lingering scent of his skin and a pulse that thundered in my ears. A few days passed. I fell into a strange, suspended routine. I ate breakfast with Maria's silent judgment. I walked the gardens under Enzo's watchful, friendly eye. I read books from the library. I was a princess in a tower, and I was going insane. Luca was a ghost. He was in the house. I could feel his presence, but he was busy. Enzo had told me, in a moment of candor, that poking the Venetti bear has consequences. Luca was at war, a quiet, unseen war fought in shadows. I needed to get out. I needed air that didn't belong to him. "A grocery run," Enzo said, looking at me like I had two heads. "We were on the terrace. Ava, we have groceries. Maria has a guy who delivers, I don't even know, crates of things." "I want to see people," I said, desperate. "I want to walk down an aisle. I want to feel normal for 1 hour. Please, Enzo, just to a supermarket. You and your men can be there." What could happen in a supermarket? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. He knew, on some level, that I was suffocating. 1 hour, and you do exactly what I say. When I say it, you don't breathe wrong. Got it? An hour later, I was in the back of another black sedan, this one following a lead car, with Enzo beside me. We drove to a generic, sprawling supermarket in a neighboring suburb. It was heaven. The fluorescent lights, the squeak of the cart, the bad pop music over the speakers. I felt a hysterical laugh bubbling in my chest. I was a tourist in my old life. Enzo and 2 other men, dressed in plain clothes but with the same rigid posture as all of Luca's men, fanned out. They were trying to look casual, but they looked like wolves in a sheep pasture. I was in the cereal aisle, agonizing over a choice like it was the most important decision of my life, when Enzo's voice came sharp in my ear. "We're leaving." "What? I haven't even gotten anything." "Now, Ava." His hand was on my elbow, his friendly demeanor gone. He was a soldier again. He pulled me toward the front of the store. "What's happening?" I whispered, panic rising. 2 men, aisle 4. They're not shopping. We were almost at the registers when the front glass doors exploded. The sound was a deafening crack, a thunderclap inside the store. People screamed. I screamed. Enzo didn't hesitate. He shoved me to the ground, hard, covering my body with his own. "Stay down, don't move." I heard shouting, another crack, crack, crack. It wasn't thunder, it was gunfire. I was pressed against the cold linoleum, smelling disinfectant and gunpowder. I couldn't breathe. This was it. This was how it ended, in a supermarket, over cereal. Another shot, and the thud of a bullet hitting something close. The metal side of a checkout counter. One of Luca's men was yelling, "Get her to the car! Go, go!" Enzo grabbed me, hauling me to my feet. "Run!" We ran. We ran past overturned carts, past screaming, crying shoppers. We burst through the shattered front doors into the parking lot. Our sedan was 10 yards away, the engine already running. A black car, a rival car, squealed around the corner of the lot, blocking our path. A window rolled down. Enzo threw me sideways, behind a concrete pillar. He drew his gun. "Get in the car, Ava!" he yelled, as he and the other men took position, using cars as cover. I scrambled, half crawling, toward the sedan. The back door opened. A shot. The back window of our car spiderwebbed. I screamed, frozen. Then, from the lead car, Luca's men returned fire. A volley of shots that sounded like a war. The black car's tires screeched. It sped off, leaving a trail of rubber and smoke. Enzo grabbed me, shoved me in the back of the sedan, and piled in after me. "Drive!" he roared. We tore out of the parking lot, leaving the chaos behind. I didn't say anything on the ride back. I just shook. My whole body was vibrating, a string pulled too tight. When we got to the mansion, I stumbled out of the car. Luca was on the front steps. He was in his suit, his face a mask of cold, controlled fury. His eyes weren't on me. They were on Enzo. "Inside," Luca said, his voice lethal. Enzo followed him into the study. I heard the door slam. I heard yelling. Luca's voice, not loud, but with a terrifying, precise anger. I just stood in the grand marble hallway, shaking apart. The adrenaline was gone, leaving a black, sucking void of terror. My knees buckled. I was going to be sick. I didn't fall. Arms wrapped around me, strong, certain, holding me up. I hadn't even heard him come out of the study. I buried my face in his chest, in the smooth, expensive wool of his suit. I gripped the lapels of his jacket like I was drowning, and I sobbed. I sobbed for my father, for my burned-down life, for the girl who was terrified in a cereal aisle. Luca just stood there. He didn't pat my back. He didn't shush me. He just held me. His arms were a steel band around me, grounding me. One of his hands moved to the back of my head, his fingers tangling in my hair, holding me securely against him. It was the first time I had been held in 10 years. "I've got you," he whispered, his voice a rough vibration against my ear. "You're safe. I've got you." We stood there for a long time, me, a broken, weeping mess, and him, the pillar holding me up, the emotional distance between us, the anger, the fear. It all just evaporated, burned away by the gunfire. Later that night, the house was silent again. But the silence was different. It was charged. I couldn't sleep. I was walking the upstairs hall, too restless, too alive. A door opened, and he was there. He had changed into a t-shirt and sweats. He had been in his office, working. He stopped when he saw me. We just looked at each other. The hallway was dim, only one small lamp burning, casting us in shadows. He had saved me. He had held me. Are you okay?" I whispered. "I'm fine," he said. His eyes were dark, intense. "Enzo is fine. My men are fine. They shot at us. They missed!" He took a step toward me. "They won't get a second chance." He was in front of me now, as close as he had been in the study. But this was different. The power was still there, but so was something else, a vulnerability, the same raw need I felt. "Thank you," I said, my voice barely audible. "For what? For putting you in the line of fire?" For holding me, for not letting go." He raised his hand, the same way he had in my bedroom. He didn't touch me, not yet. He hovered, giving me the chance to pull away. I didn't. His fingers brushed my cheek, that same electric shock, my breath caught in my throat. His eyes dropped to my mouth. "Ava," he breathed. It wasn't a name. It was a question. It was a plea. I leaned in. I don't know why. It was insane. This man was a killer. This man was my captor. His other hand came up, cupping my jaw, his thumb brushing my lower lip. My eyes fluttered shut. I felt his breath, warm and close. He was going to kiss me. And I panicked. I pulled away, stumbling back, my heart hammering. "I can't," I whispered, my voice shaking. I don't know who you are. I don't know what this is. I'm scared." He didn't move. He watched me, his face unreadable, his hands, which had been so gentle, slowly clenching into fists at his sides. He looked pained. "Go to bed, Ava," he said, his voice hoarse. He turned and walked away before I could say another word. I went back to my room, overwhelmed, confused, and trembling with a new, terrifying emotion. The next morning, Luca was gone. Maria said he had left more business. But he had left something for me. Enzo, his face bruised but his smile back in place, brought it to me. It was a simple, locked wooden box. "He said your father wanted you to have this," Enzo said. "He's kept it for you, for 10 years. I took it back to my room. There was a small, simple key in the lock. My hands were shaking. I opened it. The smell of old paper and leather hit me. Inside, there were a few faded photographs, a young man, handsome, smiling, holding a baby, me, my father, a woman I didn't recognize. And under the photos, a worn, black, leather-bound journal. I picked it up. I opened it to the first page. The handwriting was messy, hurried, but I knew it. It was his. I sat on the bed and I began to read. It wasn't a diary. It was a ledger of a life. He wrote about the organization, about the code, about the men he worked with. He wrote about his deep, abiding guilt. He wrote about the betrayal, the one he had committed. He wrote about me, how he watched me from a distance, how he was trying to get clean, to earn enough to get out, to find me again. It was hours. I read and I wept. I wept for the man I never knew, for the father I had missed. I reached the last few pages. The entries were short, frantic. He knew they were onto him. He knew he was out of time. I turned to the final page. It was dated the day before the gas leak, the last words my father ever wrote. If you're reading this, Ava, it means I failed. It means they found me. But I did one thing right. I saved a kid. His name is Romano. He's not like the others. He has honor. The world I'm in, it's a sickness. And Dominic Vanetti is the worst of it. I couldn't finish what I started. I couldn't burn out the rot. But Romano can. Do not mourn me, little bird. Just live. And if you are ever in trouble, if the shadows find you, trust Romano. He's the only one who can finish what I couldn't. I did not leave the guest suite for 2 days. I existed in a haze of my father's words, his slanted, hurried script a map to a world that had operated just beneath my own, invisible and deadly. I read the journal. I read it and read it again, until the pages felt like an extension of my own skin, until his guilt and his fear and his desperate, failed hope felt like my own. He wrote about the rot. A name kept appearing, Dominic, a betrayal that ran deeper than one man. It was a plan, a long con, a sickness, as my father called it, designed to gut the entire organization, to take power not just from Luca's predecessors, but from Luca himself. My father hadn't just saved Luca's life. He had tried to warn him about a mole, a traitor who was already inside. But my father was killed before he could prove it. And the mole was Dominic Vanetti, the man now leading the rival syndicate, the man who had sent men to the supermarket, the man who had burned my life to the ground. When Luca returned, I was waiting for him in the study. I had the journal open on his massive desk. He walked in, shrugging off his heavy overcoat. He looked at me, then at the book. His face was hard, his eyes shadowed with a fatigue that went bone deep. He knew, I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through the silence of the room. My father knew it was Dominic Vanetti. He knew there was a mole, and he knew it was him. Luca stopped. He didn't come closer. He just watched me. I know. You knew? My head snapped up. You knew this whole time that my father wasn't just saving you from some random hit, but that he was trying to expose the man who is still hunting you? Yes. And you didn't tell me? I told you what you needed to know, he said, his voice flat. The man responsible was Dominic Vanetti. The details, they are just ghosts. They are not ghosts. Luca, I slammed my hand on the desk. They are the reason I am here. This isn't just a grudge. This isn't just revenge for a 10-year-old failed hit. This is unfinished business. Vanetti isn't just trying to kill you. He's trying to finish what he started. He's trying to erase the last 2 people who know the truth. You and me. He walked to the desk, his presence sucking the air from the room. He looked down at my father's messy handwriting. His admission was a heavy, cold stone dropped between us. He looked at me, his gray eyes clear and devoid of any pity, which is why you have a choice. The Vanetti War. It is not something you can survive. Ava, not in the open, I can make you disappear. A new name, a new city, a new life. I can give you enough money to go anywhere. Be anyone, you will be safe. You will be free of this. Free of me. I stared at him. A week ago, I would have taken it. I would have run so fast I would have left footprints of fire. A new life, an escape. It was everything I had ever dreamed of. But I was holding my father's life in my hands. I was standing in the house of the man he died to save. No, I said. His expression didn't change, but a muscle in his jaw twitched. Do not be a fool. This is not a movie. There is no honor here. Only blood. I am not being a fool, I said, my voice shaking but gaining strength, and I am not being a hero. I'm just done. I am done running. I spent my entire life running from a ghost, trying to figure out who my father was. Now I know. He died trying to do something right, trying to stop that rot. He died protecting you. I rounded the desk, standing in front of him. I'm not hiding from the truth anymore. Luca, I will not run. Then what will you do? He asked, his voice low, dangerous. You will stay here? A prisoner? A target? You will wait for Vanetti to find a way in? No. I met his gaze, unflinching. I will not be a target. I will be whatever I need to be. You told me I was your responsibility. Fine, then be responsible. You're at war. You said it yourself. Well, I just enlisted. Teach me. A flicker of something passed through his eyes. Surprise? Respect. Teach you what? Teach me how not to be leverage. Teach me how not to be the girl who freezes in the supermarket. Teach me how to be the person who survives. He was silent for a long time. He searched my face, as if he could find the answer in the lines of my skin, in the fear that was still thrumming beneath my anger. The first lesson, he said finally, is that you are never, ever safe. He took me to the range. I hadn't even known the estate had one. It was a separate building, far from the house, a long concrete bunker built into a hillside. It smelled of sulfur and oil. He placed a small black handgun on the metal table. This is a Sig Sauer P365, he said, his voice all business. It is small, easy to conceal, and it has almost no kick. It is for you. I looked at it. It was a piece of cold, deadly metal. It was the tool of my father's world, the world that had killed him. I've never held a gun, I whispered. I know. He came to stand behind me. I tensed. He was close, but not touching me. Not yet. First, you respect it. You respect what it can do. You never point it at anything you do not intend to destroy. Is that clear? Yes. Pick it up. My hand was shaking. I reached out and wrapped my fingers around the grip. It was heavier than I expected. Wrong. His voice was sharp. He placed his hands over mine. My breath hitched. His hands were huge, calloused, and surprisingly warm. They enveloped mine. His fingers correcting my grip, turning my hand, placing my trigger finger along the slide, not on the trigger. Your finger never touches the trigger until you are ready to fire, he murmured, his breath stirring the hair at my temple. He was right behind me now, his chest a solid wall against my back. My entire body was on fire, hyper-aware of every point of contact. Stance, he commanded, feet shoulder-width apart. Lean into it. Don't fight it. He used his knee to nudge my leg into the correct position. His hand rested on the small of my back, guiding me, tilting me forward. I was surrounded by him. His scent, his heat, his absolute control. Now, he said, his voice a low rumble in my ear. Look down the range. Focus on the target, not the gun, the target. He loaded a magazine, the click-clack sound shockingly loud. He slotted it into the grip in my hand, his hand still over mine. We will fire together, he said. Squeeze, Ava, don't pull. His hand was on mine. His body was braced against mine. I squeezed. The bang was deafening. Even through the earmuffs he'd made me wear, the gun jumped, but he controlled it, his strength absorbing the recoil. I had missed the target completely. I had hit the wall. Again, sir, he commanded. We stayed there for hours. He taught me how to load, how to clear a jam, how to breathe. Slowly, he moved away, letting me hold the gun myself, letting me feel its weight. My arms ached, my hands were raw. But my shots were getting closer. You're a natural, Enzo said, leaning against the doorway. I hadn't even heard him arrive. Luca tensed. The lesson was over. He turned, his demeanor all business again. What is it? We got a problem, Enzo said, and he was no longer smiling. Vanetti's men hit one of our warehouses. They weren't trying to steal. They were trying to send a message. Luca swore, a low, vicious sound. He turned to me. The heat, the intimacy of the lesson was gone, replaced by the cold, hard mask. Stay here. Practice. Do not leave this building." He and Enzo were gone, leaving me with the smell of gunfire and the heavy weight of the gun in my hand. That night, I found him in the dining room. A plate of food, untouched, sat in front of him. He was staring at a glass of whiskey. The war was not going well. I could see it in the lines of his face. "You should eat," I said softly, from the doorway. He looked up. He looked surprised to see me. "I'm not hungry." "Neither am I." I walked in. Sitting in the chair across from him, the table was long enough to host 20 people, but we sat in the silence. Just the two of us. "You did well today," he said, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. I was terrified. "Good," he said. "Fear keeps you alive. It's complacency that kills you." We were quiet. I watched him, the hard angles of his face, the scar, the way his hand gripped the glass. "Why did he call it the rot?" I asked. Luca's head lifted. "Your father." In the journal, he said Vanetti was a sickness, a rot he couldn't burn out. Luca took a drink. "Because that's what he is. Our world, this life. It has rules, an omerta, a code. We don't involve civilians. We don't hurt children. We don't bring chaos to the streets. We are businessmen of a different sort. But Vanetti, he has no code. He deals in things we don't touch. He enjoys the pain. He likes the chaos. He isn't a businessman. He's a butcher." He finished the glass. "Your father saw that. He believed in the old ways, even as he was trying to leave them. Vanetti represents the end of all that." "And you?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "What do you believe in?" He looked at me, and his eyes were so empty, so cold, it made me shiver. "I believe in loyalty, and I believe in debt. Everything else is a lie." "Someone must have taught you that," I said, probing, needing to know. He was quiet for a long time. "My father," he said, and the word was like acid, "was not a good man. He was weak. He was a gambler. He owed the wrong people. When I was 8 years old, he made a bet he couldn't cover. So he made a new one. He bet me." My blood ran cold. "He sold me," Luca said, his voice flat, emotionless, as if he were reading a weather report. "To cover his debt, I was collateral. I was a servant, an errand boy, in a house full of monsters. I learned about loyalty by seeing what happens when it's broken. I learned about debt by seeing men pay with their blood. One night, when I was 16, the man who owned me made a mistake. He got drunk. He got sloppy. I took a knife from the kitchen, and I collected the debt he owed me." He looked down at his own hands. "I ran. I was on the street for a year before the old Don. The man I eventually worked for found me. He saw potential. Your father was his right hand." He looked back at me. "Your father was the first person in my entire life who showed me kindness. He taught me to read. He taught me how to fight. He taught me the code. He was more of a father to me than my own." His voice was raw, stripped bare. He had given me a piece of his soul, a piece I wasn't sure he had ever shown anyone. "So when I say I owe him," he whispered, "I'm not talking about one night in a car. Ava, I'm talking about my entire life." The silence that followed was thick, charged. I had no words. What could I say? I stood up. I walked around the table. I stood beside his chair. He watched me, his face guarded, wary. I reached out and my hand was shaking, but I placed it on his shoulder. His muscles were iron beneath his shirt. He looked at my hand, then at my face, and I leaned down. I pressed my lips to his. It wasn't a calculated move. It was an impulse, a need to offer comfort, a need to connect. But the moment my lips touched his, it changed. He didn't move. He didn't kiss me back. He just let me. His lips were firm, warm, tasting of whiskey and something impossibly sad. I pulled back, embarrassed. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. His hand came up, fast as a snake, and tangled in my hair. He gripped the back of my head, not painfully, but with an absolute, possessive strength, holding me in place. "Don't ever," he whispered, his voice rough. "Apologize for that." And he pulled me down. His mouth claimed mine. This was not the gentle, hesitant kiss I had given. This was a kiss of starvation. It was slow, and it was hungry, and it was desperate. His other hand came up to cup my jaw, his thumb tracing the line of my cheekbone as his tongue explored my mouth, tentatively at first, and then with a demanding, searching pressure. It was a kiss that spoke of years of loneliness, of a vow of solitude. I wasn't just kissing Luca Romano. I was kissing the 8-year-old boy who was sold, the 16-year-old who fought for his life. I kissed him back. I poured all my own grief, my own loneliness, my own desperate, unnamed need into it. My hands moved from his shoulder to his chest, gripping the front of his shirt. He groaned, a low, animal sound in the back of his throat, and the kiss deepened. It was controlled, but just barely. It was a promise of a fire, a controlled burn that threatened to rage out of control, and it scared me to death. I pulled back, breaking the kiss, my breath coming in ragged gasps. His eyes were dark, his pupils blown wide, his lips were wet from mine. I can't, I whispered, terrified, not of him, of what I was feeling, of losing myself in him, in this world. He held my gaze. His hand was still in my hair. I expected him to be angry. I expected him to pull me back. He didn't. He slowly, reluctantly, unwound his fingers from my hair. His hand dropped to his side. He leaned back in his chair. He took a single, shuddering breath. "I know," he said, and he respected the pause. The next few days, the tension in the house was a living thing. We avoided each other. The air between us was so thick with unspoken words, with the memory of that kiss, that it was hard to breathe. He was at war. Enzo was a constant, stressed-out presence. Men in suits came and went. The house was a command center. One afternoon, I was in the library, trying to read, but my father's journal was the only thing I could focus on. I heard voices in the foyer, a woman's voice. It was light, musical, and flirty. I walked to the door, peering out. A woman was standing there. She was stunning, tall, blonde, and poured into a red dress that was impossibly tight. She was laughing, her hand on Enzo's arm. Enzo looked uncomfortable. "He's busy. Bianca." "He's always busy," she purred, tapping a long, red nail on his chest. "But he'll see me." As if summoned, Luca appeared at the top of the stairs. He stopped, looking down at her. His face was blank. "Bianca," he said. It was not a warm greeting. "Luca, darling," she cooed, gliding to the bottom of the stairs, looking up at him. "You've been neglecting me. I brought provisions." She held up a designer bag. He descended the stairs, his eyes never leaving hers. He stopped on the bottom step, looming over her. "Now is not a good time," he said. "It's never a good time." She reached up, straightening his tie, though he wasn't wearing one. Her fingers lingered on his chest. "Don't be such a brute. We have business." I watched, my stomach twisting into a tight, ugly knot. It was jealousy. It was hot, and it was raw, and it shocked me with its intensity. This woman, she knew him. She touched him like she had the right. Luca's eyes flickered. He saw me, standing in the library doorway. His expression hardened. He took Bianca's arm. "My study, now." He marched her into the study, past me, without a single glance, and he closed the door. I stood there for an hour, my blood boiling. I couldn't read. I couldn't think. All I could picture was her red nails on his skin. Finally, the study door opened. Bianca emerged, smiling, her lipstick slightly smudged. She looked satisfied. Luca stood in the doorway, his face a mask. He watched her go, and then his eyes found mine. I turned and walked away. He followed me. I knew he would. I walked faster, heading for the stairs. Ava. I ignored him. Ava! His voice was sharper. He grabbed my arm, spinning me around. What? I snapped, ripping my arm from his grasp. Is your business concluded? His eyes narrowed. Bianca is an associate. She brings me information. Is that what she's called? I was trembling, my voice dripping with a sarcasm I didn't know I possessed. It looked like she was bringing more than that. You could have at least had the decency not to do it in the house I'm trapped in. A slow, dangerous smile spread across his face. Are you jealous, Ava? No, I lied, my cheeks burning. I am, disgusted. You're at war. My life is on the line, and you're in there with her. She is a means to an end, he said, taking a step toward me. It looked like you were enjoying the means, I spat. He was in my space now, backing me against the wall of the hallway. You have no idea what you're talking about. I know what I saw. She touched you. You let her, and then you looked at me. You looked at me like I was the one who was interrupting. She means nothing, he whispered, his hands planting on the wall on either side of my head, caging me. Then why was she in there for an hour? Why did she come out smiling? Because I gave her what she wanted, he said, his face inches from mine. Information, money, not, he said, his voice dropping, his eyes burning into mine. What you think... I don't care what you gave her, I said, my breath coming short. His proximity was intoxicating, maddening. You're a terrible liar, he murmured. His eyes dropped to my mouth. You are shaking. You are angry. You are magnificent. Don't, I breathed as he leaned in. You are jealous, he whispered against my lips, and you have no right to be. But I am glad you are. His mouth crashed down on mine. There was nothing slow or controlled about this. This was a storm. This was all the tension, the jealousy, the unspoken anger, the fear, exploding. It was raw, punishing, and possessive. His hands fisted in my shirt, pulling me flush against him. I could feel the hard lines of his body, the thundering of his heart against my own. My hands went to his chest to push him away, but instead, they gripped his shirt. I kissed him back, with all the fire and fury he had ignited in me. It was a fight. It was a surrender. His hands moved, one sliding down my back, pressing me impossibly closer, the other tangling in my hair, tilting my head. His tongue plundered my mouth, and I met him, thrust for thrust. He groaned, a sound of pure, undiluted frustration, and he lifted me. My feet left the floor. He pinned me against the wall, my legs wrapping around his waist as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I was surrounded by him, his taste, his scent, his strength. He tore his mouth from mine, pressing his forehead against mine, his breath ragged, his entire body shaking. Not like this, he rasped, his eyes squeezed shut. He was fighting himself, and he was winning, but just barely. Not here, not in anger, not when I am this close to losing control. He slowly, reluctantly, let me slide down his body, my feet touching the floor. The friction was a new kind of agony. He stepped back, putting a foot of space between us, but his eyes never left mine. They were black with desire, and something else, pain. Before either of us could say anything, his phone buzzed, a specific, encrypted tone. He pulled it from his pocket. He looked at the screen. The desire vanished, replaced by ice. What? I asked, my voice still trembling. It's a leak, he said, his voice flat, deadly. Someone inside is feeding Vanetti information. He knew about the warehouse. He knows I'm moving my assets. Who? He looked at the message. The information came from a secure line. Only 2 people have access, me and Enzo. A chill that had nothing to do with the kiss ran down my spine. Enzo, the friendly smile, the warm, disarming greeting, oh, I'm just here for the view. The man who had taken me to the supermarket, the man who had gotten me shot at. It's him, I whispered. Luca's head snapped up. What? It's Enzo, I said, more certain. He's the mole. He's too friendly. He's playing you. He's the rot. Luca. Luca's face went blank. It was the most terrifying expression I had ever seen. No, he said. The word was final. Luca, think about it. He took me to the store. He let it happen to scare me, to gain my trust. You are wrong, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. Enzo is my blood. He has been with me since I was 16. He's my brother. And my father was your brother, I countered, my voice rising. And he betrayed his. This world is built on betrayal. You do not, he said, jabbing a finger toward me. Speak about what you do not understand. You are not one of us. You are a civilian. You are scared. You are pointing fingers. But you are wrong. It is not Enzo. Then who is it? I demanded. I will handle it. He turned and walked away, leaving me shaking in the hallway. He was wrong. He was blind. He trusted the wrong person. And it was going to get us all killed. I ran to my room, my heart pounding with fear and a new cold fury. The attack came 3 hours later. I should have known. The house was too quiet. Luca was locked in his study, handling it. The first sound was an explosion. It rocked the house, throwing me from my bed, the sound of my windows shattering. Alarms blared, shouting. Gunfire. Not from a handgun. This was automatic, sustained. My door burst open. It was one of Luca's men, one I didn't recognize. They're in! We have to go! We have to get you to the safe room! He grabbed my arm, pulling me into the hallway. It was chaos. Smoke filled the air. Men were shouting in Italian. Another volley of gunfire erupted from the main staircase. My guard shoved me behind him, returning fire. He grunted, slumping against the wall. Blood! So much blood! Go! He gasped, pushing me. Run! Get to the study! Get to the boss! I ran. I ran barefoot over shattered glass, the sound of my own heart drowning out the alarms. I didn't know where I was going. I just ran, using the training, staying low, moving from shadow to shadow. I rounded a corner, my breath tearing from my lungs. A hand? It clamped over my mouth from behind, another arm locking around my waist, lifting me off my feet. I screamed, but the sound was muffled. I bit down, hard, tasting salt. Stop fighting, a voice hissed in my ear. I was dragged into a dark alcove, slammed against the wall. The hand left my mouth, and I gasped for air, turning to fight my attacker. It was Enzo. His face was grim, his friendly smile gone, his gun in his hand. They're everywhere, he said, his voice low, urgent. They used the leak. They knew the codes. They knew the blind spots. He grabbed my arm. We have to move. Now. He pulled me from the alcove, and I was frozen. He was the leak. He was the one who had done this. He was handing me over. Ava, come on, he yelled, as a fresh spray of bullets hit the wall where we had been. He was grabbing me. He was pulling me, and I didn't know if he was saving my life or ending it. He's the mole, I screamed, trying to twist out of his grip, my voice raw with terror and certainty. He's the one who let them in. Enzo's face was a mask of anguish. He didn't let me go. He just slammed me harder against the wall, his hand over my mouth again, his eyes wide and frantic, pleading. Listen to me, he hissed, the sound barely audible over a fresh burst of automatic fire down the hall. Just listen, yes, I did. I gave them the codes. My blood ran cold. I stopped fighting. They have my sister, he choked out, his voice breaking. They have Maria, my little sister. They sent me a video. Vanetti's got her. He said he'd send her back to me. In pieces. Unless I got him inside. Unless I gave him you. His confession hung in the smoke-filled air, a new, more terrible kind of explosion. He wasn't a traitor. He was a victim. Enzo, I breathed, my anger evaporating, replaced by a cold, sickening dread. I didn't know what to do, he whispered, tears streaming through the grime on his face. I tried to. I was supposed to grab you and take you to the West Gate, but I can't. I can't give you to him. He'll kill you both. He'll kill her anyway. The sound of heavy, measured shots echoed from the floor below. Thump, thump, thump. Not the panicked spray of the attackers. This was controlled. This was Luca. "Where is he?" Enzo demanded, grabbing my arm. "Where is Luca?" "The study. My guard said to get to the study." "No, that's where they want us to go. It's a kill box." He pulled me, hard. "We go to the safe room, the real one. Come on." He dragged me through a maze of hallways I didn't know existed, through a servant's passage, down a narrow flight of stairs. The gunfire was above us now. We were in the wine cellar. Enzo shoved a huge cask of wine to the side, revealing a steel door. He punched a code. The door opened, and Luca was standing on the other side. He was not in the study. He was here. He was waiting. He was dressed in black, a tactical vest strapped over his t-shirt, the same P365 I had been practicing with in his hand, another, larger gun in a thigh holster. His face was a thundercloud of pure, cold rage. He didn't look at me. His eyes were locked on Enzo. Enzo shoved me behind him, raising his own gun, not at Luca. At the doorway we had just come through. "They're right behind us," Enzo said, his voice ragged. "I gave them the codes. They have Maria. They're... Luca. They have my sister." "I know," Luca said, his voice a low, lethal growl. My gaze snapped to Luca. "You knew? You knew he was being blackmailed?" "I knew there was a leak," Luca said, his eyes still on Enzo, but his words for me. "I told you it wasn't him. I was wrong. It was him. Just not in the way you thought." Luca stepped aside. Inside, Ava. I scrambled into the safe room. It was a concrete bunker, stocked with water, medical supplies, and an arsenal of weapons. "How did you know?" Enzo asked, his voice hollow, as he backed into the room. "The message you got," Luca said, his back to us as he sealed the heavy steel door. The thud of it locking echoed, followed by the sound of muffled gunfire and shouting from the cellar. "The one that proved it was you? That was me. I sent it. I had to see how you would react. I had to see if you were a traitor or a brother." Enzo stared at him, his gun sagging in his hand. "You tested me." "I tested my blood," Luca corrected, his voice hard. "You failed. You should have come to me. You thought I would let your sister die? You thought I was Vanetti?" I didn't know what to do," Enzo cried, his tough facade crumbling. "I panicked." "And now they are in my house," Luca roared. Turning on him, he grabbed the front of Enzo's shirt, slamming him against the wall. "They are in my house. My men are dead, and Ava is a target because you panicked." "I'm sorry, boss, I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't bring back the dead." Luca's hand, the one holding the gun, came up. He pressed the muzzle against Enzo's forehead. Enzo shut his eyes, tears leaking, but he didn't beg. He just waited. My heart stopped. "Luca, no!" I grabbed his arm. "Don't! He told the truth. He was bringing me here. To you. He didn't hand me over." Luca didn't look at me. His eyes were burning into Enzo's. The room was silent except for our breathing and the distant, muffled sounds of war. "He's still a traitor," I whispered, my father's journal flashing in my mind. The sickness, the rot. I pulled my own gun from the waistband of my pants. I hadn't even realized I'd grabbed it. I raised it, my hand shaking, pointing it at Enzo's chest. "He let them in," I said, my voice cold. "He betrayed you. He almost got us killed. My father, he died because of a mole. You can't let this happen." I was ready to pull the trigger. I was ready to be the person who survives. "Ava, put the gun down." Luca's voice was ice. It wasn't a request. "He's a threat," I argued, my hand shaking violently. "Put the gun down." His eyes, cold and hard, were on me now. They held a command that was absolute. Slowly, my hand wavered. I lowered the gun. Luca held Enzo's gaze for a second longer, then roughly shoved him away. Enzo slumped to the floor, gasping, a broken man. "You're right," Luca said to me, his voice quiet. "He is a traitor, but he is my traitor, and he is the only one who knows where his sister is." He turned to Enzo. "You will stay here. You will not move. You will not speak. When this is over, you and I are going to get your sister. And then," he said, his voice dropping, "you and I will be finished." He turned, checking his weapons, his focus shifting. He was a general. The betrayal had happened. Now, it was time to win the war. We stayed in that room for 3 hours. The sounds of fighting slowly died, replaced by a new, terrible silence. Finally, Luca's phone buzzed. He looked at it. "It's over," he said. He opened the steel door. The house was gone. It was still standing, but it was a corpse. The air was thick with smoke and the smell of cordite. The marble floors were cracked, the walls pockmarked with bullet holes. There were bodies. Luca's men, Vanetti's men. I felt a scream rise, but I choked it down. Luca was a silent, grim shadow, walking through the carnage. He found one of his men, a man I recognized from the range, still alive. "Get Enzo," Luca commanded. "Lock him in the cellar. Put 2 guards on him. He speaks to no one but me." The man nodded, his face a mask of grief and fury. I followed Luca into the study. It was one of the few rooms that was relatively untouched. The heavy oak door had held. He walked to the bar, grabbed the nearest bottle, the whiskey from the other night, and hurled it against the fireplace. It shattered. The explosion of glass and liquid, a sudden, violent release. "Damn him!" he roared, sweeping his arm across the desk, sending papers and lamps crashing to the floor. "Damn him to hell!" He wasn't the cold, controlled Don. He wasn't the patient teacher at the range. He was the 16-year-old boy with a knife, the man who believed in loyalty above all else, and his brother had just spit on that code. He slumped into his chair, his head in his hands, his whole body shaking with a rage that had nowhere to go. I stood in the doorway, my heart breaking. Not for the house, not for the violence, for him. I walked to the bar. I found an unbroken glass and a new bottle. I poured 2 fingers of whiskey. I walked to his desk, my hand steady, and placed it in front of him. He looked up, his eyes bloodshot, his face a ruin of his careful control. He looked at the glass, then at me. I didn't say anything. I just stood there. I reached out, hesitantly, and placed my hand on his shoulder, the same gesture I'd made in the dining room. But this time, it was different. This time, I wasn't just offering comfort, I was standing with him. He didn't move for a long time. Then, his hand came up and covered mine, his grip crushing, his calloused fingers lacing with mine. He held my hand to his shoulder like he was holding on for life. He didn't say thank you. He didn't say anything. He just held me, and I held him back. That night, the estate was a tomb. The power was out. The air was cold. The surviving men were cleaning, boarding up windows, their movements quiet, respectful. Luca and I were in the study, the one room that felt secure. The fireplace was the only source of light and heat, casting long, dancing shadows on the walls. We sat on the thick rug in front of it, the silence stretching, punctuated only by the crackle of the logs. He had been staring into the flames for an hour, his face carved from stone. "He will pay for this," he said, his voice a low, empty rumble. "Dominic, he brought this into my home. He used my family against me. He will pay." "We will make him pay," I said, and I was shocked to hear the certainty in my own voice. He turned to look at me. The firelight softened the hard lines of his face, made his gray eyes look almost warm. "You should have run, Ava. When I offered you the new life, you should have taken it." "My father didn't run," I said, looking into the fire. "He tried to fight the rot, and you're not my father, Luca, but you're not the man who raised you either. You don't sell your family to cover a debt." His gaze was so intense, it was a physical touch. He reached out, his fingers brushing my jaw, just like he had in the hallway, just like he had in my bedroom. But this time, I didn't pull away. I didn't flinch. I leaned into his touch. "Ava," he whispered, and my name was a prayer on his lips. It was a warning. It was a plea. He had let go of his anger. He had let go of his control. He was just a man. A man who had seen his world betrayed, who was teetering on the edge of a darkness I couldn't comprehend. And I was the only thing holding him back. "I am not made for this," he whispered, his thumb brushing my lower lip. I cannot be what you need." "I don't need a savior," I whispered back, my hand coming up to rest on his chest. I could feel his heart, a heavy, steady beat beneath my palm. I don't want to be alone anymore." His eyes closed, a flicker of pain crossing his face. "I don't know how to be gentle." "I don't need gentle," I said. "I need you." That was all it took. He moved, not with the anger of the hallway, but with a slow, deliberate certainty. He pulled me to him, his mouth finding mine, and all the air left the world. This kiss was a confession. It was the taste of whiskey and smoke, of grief and a desperate, starved-out hope. It was a letting go. His hand left my jaw, sliding down my neck, his fingers tangling in the hair at my nape, his other arm wrapped around my waist, pulling me onto his lap, flush against him. I was drowning, but I was breathing for the first time. I gripped the front of his shirt, my knuckles white, anchoring myself to him. His lips were soft, yet demanding, and he kissed me like he was memorizing me, like he was staking a claim. He broke the kiss, pressing his forehead to mine, his breath coming in ragged, heavy gasps. You are something sacred. Ava," he breathed, his voice rough. "And I am a monster. I will ruin you." "You saved me," I whispered, tracing the scar on his eyebrow with my finger. "You're the only one who didn't abandon me." His eyes opened. The fire was reflected in them, but it was his own heat I felt. He lowered his head, his lips tracing a burning path from my jaw to the hollow of my throat. I arched my back, my head falling back, giving him access. His hands were everywhere, not rough, not violent. They were reverent. They moved over me like a blind man reading a sacred text. One hand slid up my side, his thumb brushing the swell of my breast, a jolt of pure electricity. The other hand slid down my back, settling on the curve of my hip, holding me, grounding me. I was breathless. He lifted his head, his eyes dark, and he looked at me, really looked at me, as if he were seeing the sun for the first time. "Stay with me," he whispered. It wasn't a command. It was a question, the first he had ever really asked me. "I'm not going anywhere," I breathed. He kissed me again, and this time, all the walls were gone. It was just us, in the ruins of his life, in the firelight. Finally letting go. The next morning, I woke up on the rug, tangled in a cashmere blanket he had retrieved, and in his arms. He was still asleep. In sleep, he looked younger. The hard lines of his face were gone. He looked at peace. I slipped from his grasp, my body aching in a new, wonderful way. I pulled the blanket over him and stood, walking to the shattered study window. Dawn was breaking. The world was cold, gray and broken, but I felt whole. I went to my room to find clothes. The room was a mess from the attack. The wooden box, the one from my father, had been thrown to the floor, its contents scattered. I knelt, picking up the photographs. My father, smiling, me, a baby. And the journal, tucked inside the back cover, a book I'd never touched, was my father's old, worn Bible. I picked it up. It felt heavy. I opened it. A single, folded piece of paper fell out. It wasn't a page from the Bible. It was a letter. My hands shook as I unfolded it. The handwriting was his. "Ava, my little bird. If you are reading this, I am dead. And if you are reading this, it means Romano kept his word. He gave you this box. He is a good man. Ava. The last one, I am writing this because the journal. It's not the whole truth. It's what I knew. This is what I'm certain of. There is a man, Dominic Vanetti. He's not just a traitor. He is the one who will kill me. I have a meeting. He said it. He says it's to make peace. He says it's to plan the final move against the old Don. But I know. I've seen his eyes. He is the rot. He is the one who ordered the hit on Luca. And now he is cleaning up his mess. And I am the last piece. Do not let this consume you. Do not let my life be the end of yours. But I want you to know the truth. I am not dying in an accident. I am not dying for a cause. I am being executed by Dominic Vanetti because I chose to save a good man and because I know his name. I love you. Ava, be brave, live, forget me. I sank to the floor, the letter clutched in my hand. He hadn't just named him in the journal. He had written his own death warrant. He knew he was going to die. I walked back to the study. Luca was awake. He was standing at the window, dressed, his face hard again. The war was back. He's at the club, Luca said, not turning. Vanetti. He's at the Serpent's Kiss. He thinks I'm broken. He thinks I'm done. He's celebrating. I walked up behind him. I want to go with you. He turned, a flat, cold no on his lips. Read this, I said, handing him the letter. He read it. His face, already hard, turned to granite. He read it again. I want revenge, Luca, I said, my voice shaking. He executed my father. He knew he was going to die, and he walked right into it. I want to see the man who did that. I want justice, Luca corrected, his voice lethal. Revenge is messy, justice is precise, and you are not going. You need to get in, I said, the plan forming, cold and clear. You can't walk in the front door. He's celebrating. It's a party. They'll be searching everyone, but a hostess, a new poker girl. She can walk right in. He stared at me. Absolutely not. You taught me to survive, I said, meeting his gaze. You taught me to shoot. You showed me what loyalty is. Let me show you what my father taught me. Let me be the one who finishes this. He will not be looking for me. He's looking for you. I can be your eyes. I can get you the intel you need. I can be your justice. We went to war that night. Bianca, the blonde associate, was brought in. She was not happy, but one look at Luca's face and her flirty demeanor vanished. She was all business. She bleached my hair, a streaky, cheap blonde. She put me in a dress that was little more than black bandages, heels that were weapons. The Serpent's Kiss is high stakes, Bianca said, her hands rough as she applied smoky eyeshadow. Hostesses are invisible until they're not. You smile, you pour drinks, you remember the faces. You never talk. You're furniture. Got it? Got it, I said, my reflection a hard, painted stranger. We arrived in a nondescript van, parking blocks away. Luca was in the back, a shadow in tactical gear, watching a bank of monitors. Enzo, released from his cell for this one mission, was driving, his face pale, his sister's life hanging in the balance. You have 5 minutes to get in, Luca said, his voice a rasp in my ear from the hidden earpiece. Bianca has your ID. It's clean. The floor manager is expecting a new girl. Go. He grabbed my hand. His grip was tight. He looked at me, at the fake hair, the cheap dress. You look nothing like yourself, but Ava. You see him. You get the intel. You get out. You do not engage. You do not talk to him. You are a ghost. Understood? I'm a ghost, I agreed. I walked into the Serpent's Kiss. The air was thick with cigar smoke, expensive perfume, and the low, buzzing hum of men with too much money and no morals. It was a dark, plush, red velvet hell. The floor manager, a slick man with a pockmarked face, barely looked at my ID. You're late. Get to the back room. High stakes. And don't spill anything. I walked into the high-stakes room, and there he was. My father's journal had called him a butcher. Luca had called him the rot. He was beautiful. He was sitting at the head of the poker table, laughing. He was my age, maybe a few years older, with sandy blonde hair, a movie star smile, and eyes the color of a clear blue sky. He wore a pristine white suit, and he looked like a god. He was charming. He was electric. "And I told him," he was saying, his voice smooth and educated, "if you can't cover the spread, don't play the game. Simple." The table laughed with him. He was a sadist. He was a killer. He had executed my father. I walked to the bar, my legs shaking, and picked up a tray of drinks. "Ava!" Luca's voice crackled in my ear. "Status!" "I'm in," I whispered, my lips barely moving. "I see him. He's at the main table." "Good. Look for his second. A man named Sal. Big, ugly, scar on his chin. He'll be holding the book. He'll have the security info. We need to know how many men he has. We need to know where they're holding Enzo's sister." I scanned the room. I poured drinks. I smiled. I was furniture. I saw him, Sal. He was standing by a back door, talking to a guard, a ledger in his hand. Dominic looked up as I passed, his blue eyes locked on mine. I froze. He smiled. It was slow, predatory. He beckoned me over with one finger. "No," Luca's voice was sharp in my ear. "Ava, walk away." I couldn't. The floor manager was watching. If I walked away, I was burned. I walked to the table. I walked to my father's killer. "Well, hello," Dominic purred, his eyes raking over me. "I haven't seen you before. What's your name?" "Sweetness." "Chrissy," I said, the name Bianca had given me. "Chrissy." He tasted the name. "You're nervous." "Chrissy, I can see your hand shaking." He reached out, his hand closing over mine as I held the tray. His skin was warm. "It's okay, I don't bite. Unless you want me to." His thumb stroked the inside of my wrist. "Luca," I whispered, my lips barely moving, my smile frozen. "He's talking to me." The silence in my ear was absolute. He was listening. He was restraining himself. I could feel Luca's rage, 1,000 miles away, a tangible thing. He was watching this on a monitor, watching this monster touch me. "You're new," Dominic said, his smile fading, his eyes becoming analytical. "Where did they find you?" "Just looking for a job," I said. "I bet." His eyes narrowed. He looked at my face, at the cheap blonde hair. "You have familiar eyes." My blood turned to ice. "She's made..." Luca's voice was ice. "Get out, now. Create a distraction." I did the only thing I could. I tripped. I let the tray of drinks go, splashing ice, whiskey, and glass all over the front of his pristine white suit. He jumped back, roaring in surprise. "You clumsy..." "I'm so sorry," I shrieked, dabbing at his suit with a cocktail napkin. "I'm so sorry, sir." Sal, the man with the book, rushed over. "Boss, you okay?" "Get her out of here," Dominic snarled, brushing me off. A guard grabbed my arm, yanking me to my feet. "Sal," I cried, grabbing the front of Sal's shirt as if I was still trying to apologize. I saw, on your book, you're holding a girl, Maria, at the Southside Pier, Pier 41, and please, It was a gamble, a desperate, insane gamble. Sal's face went white when he knew I'd seen it. "Get her out," he yelled, pushing me toward the guard. The guard was dragging me, his fingers biting into my arm. "Ava, run!" Luca yelled in my ear. I stomped my heel, hard, onto the guard's instep. He roared, his grip loosening. I spun, grabbed a bottle of vodka from the bar, and smashed it over his head. The room erupted. I ran. I burst through the back door, the one Sal had been guarding, and into a cold, dark alley. "Go, go, go!" Luca was screaming. Alarms were blaring. I ran, my heels catching on the cobblestones. I kicked them off. A hand grabbed me, pulling me into a side alley. I screamed. It was Luca. He was in his black gear, his face a mask of fury. He didn't say a word. He just grabbed my hand and we ran. We reached the van. Enzo peeled out, tires smoking. "Pier 41! Pier 41!" I gasped as I tumbled into the back. His book, I saw it. He had a ledger, Pier 41, Maria. Enzo sobbed, a sound of pure, agonized relief. Luca just looked at me. He was shaking. Not from fear, from rage. We got out, blocks away, switching to a clean car. He pulled me into another alley, dark and smelling of rain, as Enzo drove the van to a ditch. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, his hands on my shoulders, his eyes scanning me. "No, I'm fine." That was... He couldn't even form the words. He was too angry. "I got it, didn't I?" said, my adrenaline soaring. "I got the info, Pier 41. He stared at me, his chest heaving, and then he kissed me. He slammed me back against the cold brick wall, his mouth crushing mine. It was a kiss of pure, undiluted adrenaline. It was anger and fear and a terrifying, white-hot passion. It was his control, his ironclad will shattering. He kissed me like he was angry, angry that he cared, angry that I had put myself in danger, angry that he couldn't have stopped himself from coming after me. I kissed him back just as hard, my hands fisted in his tactical vest. The cold brick scraped my back. The city sirens wailed, and I didn't care. He tore his mouth from mine, pressing his forehead against mine, his breath visible, a cloud of white in the cold air. "Don't you ever," he rasped, "do that to me again. Ever." He pulled me with him, back to the car. We piled in. As we drove, he was silent. He just stared out the window, his jaw working. Finally, he spoke, his voice low, a promise, a vow to me, to himself, to the ghosts in the car. "No one else will die for me. Not again." We drove for 6 hours. We left the blood and smoke of Chicago behind, the van from the alley ditched, our new car, a black anonymous sedan Luca had stashed in a city garage, eating up the miles. We crossed the border into Wisconsin as the sun was setting, staining the sky a bruised purple and orange. Luca did not speak. His promise from the alley, "No one else will die for me, not again," was a living, breathing thing in the car, a vow so heavy I could barely breathe around it. He had made one call on a burner phone, a short, guttural conversation in Italian. The only words I understood were Pier 41 and Enzo, Pier 41, Maria. When he hung up, his jaw was granite. "Enzo and a team are at the pier," he said, his voice flat. "They will get his sister. Our job is to disappear. Vanetti thinks he has me cornered. He thinks I'm running around the city, wounded. He's wrong. I'm cutting off the head. But first, I am putting you somewhere he can never find you." He took me to a cabin. It wasn't a mansion. It wasn't a fortress. It was a small, timber frame house tucked deep in a forest of pine trees, at the end of a long, unpaved road. It was so isolated, so off-grid, that the silence was a physical weight. "Where are we?" I whispered. As we got out, the air was cold, smelling of pine needles and damp earth. "Nowhere," he said, pulling 2 heavy bags from the trunk. "A place I bought years ago, under a name that isn't mine. No one knows it exists. Not Enzo, not my men, no one, just him, and now, me." The cabin was one large room, with a fieldstone fireplace, a small kitchen, and a loft overhead. It was rugged, masculine, but clean. There was food in the pantry. There were guns in a locked cabinet. There was one bed in the loft. The first night, the tension was a wire stretched to its breaking point. The one bed. We both stared at the ladder to the loft. "I'll take the couch," he said, his voice rough, as if the admission pained him. "It's too small for you," I said, looking at the worn-out sofa. You'll break it." He looked at me, and I saw a flicker of the man from the study, the man from the alley, Ava. "We're adults," I said, my cheeks burning. We're fugitives. It's just a bed. We can sleep. Just sleep." He didn't argue, and he just nodded, a single sharp dip of his chin. We lived. It was a strange, suspended existence. We were fugitives, but it was the first time in my life I had ever felt domestic. Our days fell into a rhythm. In the morning, he would be gone, running the perimeter of the vast woods, checking for traps, for any sign of intrusion. I would make coffee, the strong, black kind he drank, and wait. When he returned, we trained. He took me to a clearing, and he was no longer Luca, the man who had held me. He was the Dawn. He taught me how to move, how to see. He taught me how to field strip the P365, how to clean it until it gleamed, how to reassemble it in the dark. "Your hands are your eyes," he'd murmur, his own large, calloused hands guiding mine over the cool metal. "You must be able to do this by feel. You must be able to do this when you are terrified, when your heart is trying to escape your chest." I cooked. I found a strange rhythm in chopping vegetables, in making stews from the supplies in the pantry. He would sit at the small wooden table watching me, his gun on the table, a silent guardian. We ate by the fire. We talked, but not about the war. We talked about nothing. The wood, the cold, the way the deer would come to the salt lick he'd set up. And we slept in that one bed. We slept back to back, a wide, cold gulf between us. We never touched. I would lie awake, hyper-aware of his breathing, of the heat radiating from his body just inches from mine. He was so close, yet he was a million miles away, locked in his own world of strategy and guilt. Slowly, the gulf shrank. One night, I woke from a nightmare. The grave, the men in black suits, my father turning, his face gone, blank. I woke with a gasp, my body rigid. Luca was already moving. He wasn't asleep. He never really was. He turned over, in the dim moonlight filtering through the loft window. I could see his eyes. "You're safe," he whispered. "I know," I breathed, my voice shaking. He didn't move away. He just stayed, facing me, a silent protector. I don't know why I said it. Maybe it was the darkness. Maybe it was the isolation. Maybe I just couldn't hold it in anymore. I think I just wanted him to see me," I whispered into the cold air. Luca was still, "Your father?" "All of them." I felt the tears, hot and sudden, tracking down my temples. My father, he left. My mother, she couldn't handle being a mob wife or a mob widow or whatever she was. So she left, too. I was just the girl at the coffee shop. I was invisible. I spent my whole life just trying to prove that I mattered, that I was worth sticking around for. I took a shaky breath, and then I met you, at his grave, and suddenly, I'm the one thing everyone is looking at. I'm leverage, I'm a target, and I don't know if I'm fighting for his memory, or just to finally prove that I'm real, that I'm worth fighting for. The confession hung in the darkness. I felt exposed, raw. He was silent for so long. I thought he had fallen asleep, but then his hand moved. It found mine under the covers. His fingers, rough and calloused, laced with mine. His grip was warm and strong, and it was the first time he had touched me in days. "I know what it is to be invisible," he said, his voice a low, rough rasp. "To be less than something, to be sold, used." He told me about his father, about the betrayal, about the years he spent building his walls so high. No one could ever get in. "I have never," he said, his thumb brushing my knuckles, "trusted anyone, not fully, not Enzo, not the men who would die for me. Trust is a liability. It is a weakness. It is the knife you give someone to put in your back." He squeezed my hand. "And then, you, with your fire, and your stubborn, terrifying bravery, you at the club, you in the alley." He shifted, moving closer. The cold gulf was gone. His face was just inches from mine. I could feel his breath, warm against my skin. "You're not a liability. Ava, you're a reckoning. You make me want a life I thought I didn't deserve." His words, His confession broke the last rusted chain around my heart. He was looking at my mouth. I was looking at his. "Luca," I breathed. He leaned in, slowly, as if giving me a final chance to escape. I met him halfway. The kiss was nothing like the ones before. It wasn't the angry, adrenaline-fueled kiss in the alley. It wasn't the desperate, hungry kiss in the dining room. This was a kiss of acceptance. It was slow. It was deep. It was a promise. His lips were soft, searching, asking a question I was finally ready to answer. He pulled back, just enough to look at me, his gray eyes dark, filled with an emotion I couldn't name. It was raw. It was vulnerable. "I will ruin you," he whispered, a final warning. "You saved me," I whispered back. He kissed me again and the world fell away. He moved over me, his weight a comforting, solid presence, the lamplight, the only light in the cabin besides the dying embers in the fireplace, cast shadows across the hard planes of his face, the muscles in his chest. This was not a rush. It was a memorization. His hands, the hands I had watched clean weapons, the hands that had brought down an empire. They were impossibly gentle. They explored me like I was something sacred. He treated me like I was precious, not like I was leverage. His hands slid from my waist, up my sides, his thumbs brushing the underside of my breasts. I shivered, my breath catching. He watched my face, his eyes locked on mine, as if he was reading my very soul. He lowered his head, his mouth tracing a path of fire along my jaw, down my neck, to the hollow of my throat. It wasn't a claim, it was worship. I gripped his shirt, my fingers bunching the fabric, pulling him closer, needing to feel him, all of him. The world had shrunk to this bed, this man, this moment. He lifted his head, his breath ragged, his forehead pressed to mine. "Ava," he breathed, and it was a prayer. It was a sanctuary, in a world of blood and betrayal. We had found peace. In the heart of the storm, we had found each other, and under the soft, forgiving lamplight, I let him in. I gave him the one thing I had left, the one thing that had always been mine, and he, in return, gave me the one thing he had never given anyone, his trust. The next morning, the world outside was quiet, blanketed in a soft gray mist. I woke up first, tangled in his arms, his breathing a steady, slow rhythm against my back. I felt safe. I slipped out of bed, pulling on one of his shirts, and went downstairs to make coffee. I felt normal. And that, of course, was when the phone rang. The burner phone, the one he kept on the mantel. It had been silent for days. Now, it shrieked, a piercing, ugly sound that shattered the peace. Luca was downstairs in a second. He was dressed, his gun in his hand, his eyes scanning the windows. He had gone from sleep to soldier in less than a second. He looked at the phone, he looked at me, then he answered it. "Enzo." He listened. I watched his face, the peace, the vulnerability from last night. It was gone. The granite mask was back, colder and harder than ever. "What?" he growled, a low, lethal sound. He listened again, his eyes closing, his hand clenching the phone so tightly his knuckles went white. "He's dead," Luca said, his voice flat. "Who?" I whispered, my heart stopping. "Enzo?" Luca shook his head. He looked at me, and his eyes were dead. "Enzo got his sister," he said, his voice a rasp. "He and his team. They hit Pier 41, and it was a trap. They were waiting. Enzo's team. They're gone. All of them. Enzo and Maria. They're the only ones who made it out." "Oh my God," I breathed, slumping against the counter. "But that," Luca continued, his voice dropping to a whisper, "is not the message." He held the phone out. Enzo had sent him a picture. I looked, and I screamed. It was a picture of my father's grave. The headstone was shattered, spray painted in red. The grass was dug up. It was desecrated. And on the ruined stone, a note was nailed. What does it say? I asked, my voice shaking. Come alone, Luca read, his voice a venomous hiss, or she dies. She? I said. He still has Maria? No, Luca said. He sent a second picture. It's not Maria, it's Bianca. Bianca, the blonde, the associate. He's luring you, I said, my mind racing. He knows you'll come for one of your own. He knows I'm coming to kill him, Luca corrected. He was already checking his weapons, his movements fast, precise. He was going now. Wait, I said, I'm coming with you. No, he said. It was not a discussion. It was a command. You are staying here. You are the one thing I have to protect. You will lock this door, and you will not open it for anyone but me. He desecrated my father's grave. Luca, I yelled, the rage coming, hot and fast, replacing the fear. He spat on him. He's using my family, my name, to get to you. This is my fight, too. This is my war, he roared. Turning on me, the man from the loft was gone. This was the dawn. This is a trap. He wants me. He wants me angry. He wants me sloppy. He does not get you. You are not a warrior, Ava. You are a civilian. You are what I am fighting for. I am not, I shrieked, slamming my hand on the counter. I am not the girl you get to lock in a cabin. I am not leverage. I am not a prize. I am a participant. You taught me to shoot. You taught me to fight. Do not tell me to hide while you fight my battle. It is not your battle. He executed my father. The words hung in the air, heavy and final. He looked at me, his face a mask of agony. He wanted to give in. I could see it. And that, more than anything, was why he couldn't. You will stay here, he said, his voice quiet, lethal. That is an order. He walked to the door, and he didn't look back. He just opened it, stepped out into the gray mist, and was gone. I stood there for a long time, my entire body shaking with rage and a cold, terrible certainty. He was walking into a trap, and he was alone. I waited until I was sure he was gone. I waited until I couldn't hear the car. Then I went to the gun cabinet. He had taught me how to pick the lock. He had called it a lesson in vulnerabilities. I took my gun. I took 3 extra magazines. I took the keys to the old truck I'd found in the shed. He was blind. He thought Dominic was just a butcher. But I had read my father's journal. I knew. Dominic wasn't just a butcher. He was a snake, and he was smart. I drove faster than I had ever driven. I knew where to go. Oak Crest Cemetery, the place where it all began. It was where it was going to end. When I got there, dusk was falling. The cemetery was cast in a cold, blue light. It was silent, too silent. I left the truck at the gate. I moved through the tombstones just as he had taught me, shadow to shadow, my gun in my hand, my heart a hammer against my ribs. I got to the grassy slope, and I saw him, Dominic Vanetti. He was standing over my father's ruined grave in a pristine white suit, just as I'd seen him at the club. He was alone. No, not alone. He was too smart. Ava Moretti, he said, his voice smooth, casual. He turned, that same beautiful, movie star smile. I was wondering when you'd come home. Where is he? I spat, my gun raised, my hands shaking. Luca? Oh, he's coming. He's just being detained. A little traffic problem I arranged. He looked at my gun. Tisk, tisk. Is that how you greet your host? After I went to all this trouble? You monster, I choked out. Monster? He laughed. A light, airy sound. I'm a businessman. Your father. He was a sentimental rat. He didn't understand the new market. He wanted to talk about code, about honor. He reached into his pocket. He was a fool, a sentimental fool. He pulled something out. It glinted in the dying light. A ring, a simple gold signet ring. My father's ring. He died clutching this, Dominic said, his voice dropping to a confidential purr. He was messy. He begged for you, I think. He kept He kept whispering your name, my little bird. It was pathetic. My vision went red. I pulled the trigger. Click. The gun... Click. I looked at it, stupid, confused. Dominic laughed. Oh, sweetness, did you really think he'd leave you with a loaded weapon? Luca took the firing pins, all of them. He taught you to shoot, but he didn't trust you. He stepped toward me. He's a monster. Ava, a hypocrite. He wants to keep you in a cage. I want to set you free. He was in front of me now. He took the useless gun from my hand. He didn't trust you, he whispered, but I trust you. I'm going to tell you a secret. He leaned in, his breath warm, smelling of mint. I killed him, he whispered. Your father. I did it myself. I don't let others handle my personal affairs. He looked me right in the eye and he wouldn't break. So I broke him. A single hot tear of pure hatred rolled down my cheek. Get away from her, Dominic. Luca's voice. He was standing at the edge of the slope. He was not detained. He was here. He was dressed in black, tactical gear, weapons drawn. He was a shadow. He was death. Dominic smiled, his hand clamping on my arm. He pulled me against his white suit. Ah, Luca, always the hero, but you're predictable. He pressed a small knife, a stiletto, to my throat. I hadn't even seen him draw it. You came alone, Dominic mocked, just like I asked, but I didn't. A red dot, a single laser red dot, appeared on my forehead. A sniper. You move, she dies. Dominic purred. Your men move. She dies. It's just you and me. Luca, the old way, the new way. Let's see who wins. Luca didn't move, and he just watched. His face was calm. You're right. Dominic, it is just you and me. He took the firing pins, I choked out, trying to warn him. I know, Luca said. His eyes flickered to me. I put them in my pocket. You did well. Ava. You came. You were the bait, and he took it. What? Dominic's smile wavered. What? He wasn't luring me with Bianca, Luca said, his voice cold. He wasn't luring me with the grave. He was luring you. He knew. You wouldn't be able to stay away. A single, sharp, silence fushit sound cut the air. The red dot on my forehead vanished. Dominic's eyes went wide. From a mausoleum 300 yards away, a figure emerged. Enzo. Sniper's gone, boss. Enzo's voice crackled over a small radio on Luca's vest. The girl is safe. Your sister is safe. I'm sorry. Luca, for everything. It is done, brother, Luca said, his eyes never leaving Dominic. Dominic shoved me, hard, and lunged at Luca. It wasn't a fight. It was a brawl. It was raw. It was brutal. It was all the hate, all the years, all the blood. They crashed onto the ruined grave, fists flying. Dominic was fast, slippery, fighting with the stiletto. Luca was power. He was a force of nature. He took a cut to the arm, a cut to the ribs, but he just kept coming. Dominic got the upper hand. He was on top of Luca, the stiletto raised, ready to plunge it into his heart. You see, Luca, he screamed, his beautiful face twisted. This is how it ends. I am the new way. I had been scrambling, my hand, my pocket, where... Luca had been training me. He had taught me. Sleight of hand. When he had kissed me in the alley, when he had held me, his hand had been in my pocket. My gun, the P365, it wasn't empty. When he hadn't taken the firing pin, he had swapped it. He had taken my empty one and left me I pulled it out. My hand was shaking. Focus on the target, not the gun. I aimed, I breathed. Dominic was laughing. I shot him. Not in the head, not in the chest. I shot him in the leg. He screamed, a high, piercing sound, and rolled off Luca. Luca was on his feet in an instant. He kicked the stiletto away. He stood over Dominic. his chest heaving. He looked at me. He nodded, once. The final confrontation was his. He didn't kill him, not quickly. It was precise. It was justice. It was over. Dominic Vanetti lay on the grass, in his ruined white suit, his blood soaking into the desecrated earth of my father's grave. He was dying. He was gasping, his blue eyes staring at the gray sky. I walked over. Luca stepped aside, giving me space. I stood over him, the man who had haunted my life, the man who had executed my father. I leaned down so he could hear me. That, I whispered, my voice cold, steady and final, was for my father. The sirens were a promise. They started as a distant, lonely wail, a sound I had associated with my old life, with the chaos of the city. But here, in the suffocating silence of Oak Crest Cemetery, they were a signal. They were the sound of an ending. Dominic's body was a white, ruined suit on the desecrated grass. He was no longer a man, no longer a monster. He was just finished. Luca stood, his chest heaving, his face a mask of sweat, blood and grime. The cut on his arm, the one from Dominic's stiletto, was a deep, dark red, dripping onto the earth. He didn't seem to notice. He looked at the body, then at the shattered headstone of my father's grave. He was a king standing in the ruins of his own war, and for the first time, I wasn't sure he felt like he had won. He's dead, I whispered. The gun, his gun, still heavy in my hand. It is done, Luca said, his voice a low, hollow rasp. He walked to me, his movements stiff. He didn't look at my face. He looked at the gun. Gently, his uninjured hand, the one not stained with his own blood, closed over mine. He guided my finger from the trigger and carefully, tenderly, took the weapon from my grasp. He tucked it into the back of his waistband. The sirens were closer now. Not just one, but many. Red and blue lights flashed through the trees at the cemetery gates. Luca, we have to go, I said, my adrenaline-soaked brain finally catching up. They're coming. I know, he said. He didn't move. He didn't run. He just stood there, his back to the approaching lights. What did you do? I asked, my voice shaking. You called them? I made a call before I left the cabin, he said, his voice flat. An anonymous tip, a rival gang war, shots fired in Oak Crest. You tipped them off to your own? To this? I was confused. This wasn't the code. This wasn't the way it was done. I told you, Ava, he said, finally turning to look at me. His gray eyes were ancient, filled with an exhaustion that went deeper than the fight. No more cover-ups, no more shadows. This rot. It ends here, in the light. The first police car crunched onto the gravel path, then another. Doors slammed, shouts echoed. Luca Romano, put your hands in the air. Luca turned, slowly, to face them. He raised his hands, his bloody arm glistening in the flashing lights. Stay behind me, Ava, he murmured, his voice a low command. Do not speak. Do not say a word. I will handle this. What? Do as I say. This is my story, not yours. Flashlight beams cut through the dusk, pinning us like insects. They saw the body. They saw the guns. They saw him. On your knees, now! Luca, the man who commanded a city, the man who had brought down an empire, the man I had just shared a bed with. He went to his knees. He did it slowly, without argument, his gaze never leaving the ranking officer. It was not an act of surrender. It was an act of compliance. It was the most defiant thing I had ever seen. They swarmed him. They kicked his legs, shoved his face into the grass, cuffed his hands behind his back. I screamed, but he had told me not to speak. Ma'am, are you okay? A female officer was at my side, her hand on my arm, pulling me away from him. Are you hurt? Did he do this to you? I just stared, mute. They hauled him to his feet. He was a king in chains. As they marched him past, he stopped, his eyes finding mine. The world was screaming, lights were flashing, but for 1 second there was only him. He wasn't scared, he wasn't angry, he was calm. He had seen this move. He had planned for it. And he nodded, a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. Trust me. Then he was gone, shoved into the back of a squad car. Enzo found me. I don't know how, but as the police were trying to get a statement, as I was sitting, wrapped in a scratchy blanket in the back of an ambulance, he appeared. He was clean, his face grim. She's in shock, he told the officers, flashing a card I couldn't see. I'm family. I'm taking her home. Our lawyers will be in touch. They let me go. Just like that, the name Romano, it turned out, was still a key. Enzo drove me back to the ruined estate. It was different. The bodies were gone. The blood was cleaned. The windows were boarded up with fresh plywood. It was a tomb, but it was a clean tomb. Maria, I whispered, as we walked into the dark foyer. She's safe, Enzo said, his voice thick. She's at a safe house. With Bianca, they're okay. He wouldn't look at me. Enzo, I said, stopping him. Your team. His face crumpled. He was not the smiling, confident man I had met. He was a soldier who had lost his entire squad. They died for my mistake. For my sister. They were good men. The best. I'm so sorry. He knew, Enzo whispered, his voice full of a terrible, broken awe. Luca knew it was a trap. He sent me, but he gave me a tactical team, not just a hit squad. He gave me a chance. He knew I had to be the one to save her, to redeem myself. He is a traitor, I found myself saying, echoing my own words from before. Yes, Enzo agreed, a tear rolling down his cheek. He is. He betrayed the code. He trusted me when I shouldn't have been trusted. He finally looked at me, his eyes clear. He's not like the others, Ava. He is what your father believed he was. The next few days were the longest of my life. I was a ghost in a house of ghosts. The few remaining men, the ones who had survived, were silent. They were waiting. The organization was headless. The city was holding its breath. I sat in the study, his study. I sat in his chair. I slept in his bed. I wore his shirt. I was surrounded by him. But the house was empty. His lawyers came, stiff men in suits that cost more than my old apartment. They spoke to me with a distant, cold respect. Mr. Romano's case is complex. The evidence is confusing. The witnesses are unreliable. Dominic Vanetti, it turned underscore out, had a list of enemies as long as the Chicago River. The police had a dozen theories: a drug deal gone bad, an internal power struggle, a random act of violence. The one thing they didn't have was evidence. The gun I had used? It was gone. My fingerprints wiped, the snipers, the security footage. It had all malfunctioned. Luca had not been planning a cover-up. He had been planning a controlled demolition. He had left them a body. He had left them a suspect, but he had left them. No story. No rot to follow. On the 4th day, Enzo came to me. He's out, he said. I was at the precinct before the car had even cooled. I stood on the steps. In the cold, midday sun, I was not the numb barista from 10 years ago. I was not the terrified girl from the fire. I was a woman waiting for her man. The doors opened. He walked out. He was in a cheap suit the lawyers had given him. His face was bruised. He was unshaven. He looked human. He stopped when he saw me. He hadn't expected me to be there. He had expected to be alone. The world stopped. The press, a few stray photographers, snapped pictures. The city traffic was a dull roar. He just looked at me. His gray eyes, the ones I had seen full of rage and passion and pain, were now just full. He walked toward me, and he didn't run. He didn't smile. He just walked. He walked like a man who had been underwater for a month and was taking his first breath. He stopped in front of me. He raised a hand, his fingers tracing the scar on his own eyebrow, as if he was remembering. Then, his hand shaking, came up and brushed the hair from my cheek. The same gesture he had used in my bedroom. "You're still here," he whispered, his voice rough. "I'm still here," I said, my voice breaking. He didn't kiss me. He didn't hug me. He just put his hand on the small of my back, a simple, possessive, public gesture. "Let's go home," he said. The weeks that followed were a new kind of war, a quiet one. Luca's organization. He dismantled it. I sat in the study with him, night after night. I brought him coffee, and I rubbed his shoulders. And I watched him tear down the world his father figure had helped build, the world that his own father had sold him into. He was a CEO managing a hostile liquidation. He made calls, he signed papers, he sold warehouses, he transferred territories, he put trusted allies in charge, men who understood the new code, his code. "The rod is gone," he told me one night, staring into the fireplace. "But the sickness is the life itself. You can't be in this and be clean. Your father knew it. He tried to get out." "And now you're trying to get out," I whispered. "No," he said, turning to look at me. He pulled me onto his lap. "I'm not trying. I am. This isn't for me. This was for survival. This was for debt. The debt is paid." He was handing over the reins. He was retiring. He was doing the one thing my father couldn't. A month after his release, I knew I had to go. One last time. I drove to Oakcrest. I went alone. The grave was new. A beautiful, simple black granite headstone stood where the old one had been. Marco Moretti. A father, a friend, a man of honor. I knelt, my fingers tracing the new letters. The earth was fresh. The grass was new sod. I felt them before I saw them. I stood, turning. 10 men in black suits. They were standing in a semicircle, 20 feet away. My heart didn't pound. I wasn't scared. They were not encircling the grave. They were not guarding it. They were standing, their heads bowed. One by one, they stepped forward, and one by one, they placed a single white rose at the foot of the grave. They were not his men. They were Luca's men, what was left of them. They were honoring him, my father, the man who had started it all, the man who had saved their boss. When they were done, they turned, they looked at me, and they bowed, a slight, respectful inclination of their heads, to me. Then they were gone. They faded back into the trees, silent as shadows. I was weeping, my hand over my mouth, the hollow, empty space in my chest, the one I had carried for 10 years, was full. It was full of grief. Yes, but it was full. A hand landed on my shoulder. I didn't have to turn. I knew his touch. I leaned back into his chest. He wrapped his arms around me, holding me as I cried for the father I had finally found. We stood there for a long time in the silence. "It's beautiful," I whispered. "He was a good man," Luca said, his voice a low rumble against my ear. He moved his hand, he uncurled his fist. In his palm, glinting in the afternoon sun, was a simple, gold signet ring. My father's ring. Dominic's men had taken it as a trophy. Enzo's men had reclaimed it. Luca took my left hand, and slowly, he slid the ring onto my palm. He closed my fingers over it. "He's home, Ava," he said. He held his hand out. I took it. We walked out of the cemetery, our fingers laced. The October sun was low in the sky, casting our shadows long behind us. We got in the car, the same black sedan, but it felt different. It wasn't a car for a Dawn, it was just a car. He started the engine. He didn't drive, he just looked at me. His gray eyes, so full of warmth, so full of life. "You ready for the next life?" he asked. I looked at our joined hands. I looked at his face, the man who was a monster, who was a savior, who was a boy sold for a debt, who was mine. I brought his hand to my lips and kissed his rough knuckles. As long as you're in it, I replied. That was 6 months ago. The estate is still here. The stone walls are still high. But the air is different. There are fewer guards, more gardeners. Maria is back, and she is smiling. She is teaching me to make a proper sauce. Enzo is here. His sister safe. His loyalty absolute. He is Luca's brother. The study, it's no longer an office. It's a studio. I'm teaching a painting class, 3 days a week. Kids from the city, kids from neighborhoods like mine, from neighborhoods like his, underprivileged, angry, brilliant kids who just need a space to be seen. Today, we're painting with our hands. It's a mess. There is red and blue paint on the marble floors, on the silk wallpaper. I am laughing. My hair is matted with yellow. I look up. He's on the porch, and he's not in a suit. He's in jeans and a simple gray t-shirt that stretches across his chest. He's leaning against a pillar, his arms crossed. And he is smiling. It's not the small, controlled twitch. It's not the dangerous, wolfish grin. It's a real, full, crinkling at the eyes smile. He is free. I dismiss the class. I walk out onto the porch, my hands covered in paint. You're a mess, he says, his voice full of a soft amusement I am still getting used to. So are you, I say, wiping a blue streak on his cheek. He laughs, a sound that is still new, still precious. He pulls me to him, not caring about the paint. He kisses me. It is not the kiss of a dawn. It is not the kiss of a fugitive. It is the kiss of a man who is home. We are standing under the great sprawling oak tree at the edge of the lawn, the same tree, he told me once, where he had stood as a young man, after he had taken control, and swore to his father's memory that he would never trust, never weaken, never love again. He kisses me under the branches of that same tree, and his vow is broken, beautifully and completely. He pulls back, his forehead resting against mine, his hands buried in my hair. I love you, Ava Moretti, he whispers. I love you, Luca Romano. And we kiss again. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We're so glad you joined us on this journey. We would love to hear from you. Please, drop a comment and let us know where in the world you are listening from. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to Mafia Romance Stories for more. We read every comment, so be sure to share your thoughts in English. We'll see you in the next story.